it was like a Friday news dump vibe where it just kind of popped up. It was kind of an under the radar. He's Marion. I think he has connections to Idris Farouk, right? In that school, Ryan, isn't that the school he?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
he's from the Baltimore area, and that's where he had a stint as a. I don't think he was a head coach. I'm not positive. The New Orleans Saints website profile of Cory Robinson didn't say if he was an assistant coach or a head coach there, but yes, he was. He had spent time at the high school that he was at, or he was
And
at.
now time with Alante Taylor, with the New Orleans
Yeah,
Saints, and
and Bryce Thompson.
yeah.
Thompson.
So I just feel like reading through the tea leaves that if you're Willie Martinez, one of two things, where it's like maybe he's just looking to retire. Like he's been doing this for a long time. Maybe he goes and like, I don't know. Maybe that this is just it for him. Like we assume this is probably it for Rodney Gardner, right? After this, he probably retires whenever that he ever wants to do it. This feels like the last stop for Rodney Gardner. Maybe Willie Martinez went into this thinking this might be the last stop for him. I don't know, but when you look at this, does this not kind of look like Tennessee's got their, if things go awry in the secondary this year again, we have our in-house option who has recruiting ties, has NFL ties, and someone we can slide right in there to DB coach next year.
I think it at least gives Josh Heupel a look at him, and I think I hadn't even thought about this before when we were talking about him. You just made a good point. And it's been more on the offensive side of the ball where it's Josh Heupel's guys, but he has promoted from within with the two coaching moves that he's made since his original staff. So I think that's an interesting point. And, yeah, I think, whether it be a retirement or, whether just the pressure's on, I think Martinez has recruited pretty well. Not fantastic, but pretty well. But obviously this does feel like somewhat of a make and break year in the secondary. There needs to be real signs of growth after it being okay in 2021, maybe even pretty bad in 2021, but only just pretty bad because you got Alante Taylor and Theo Jackson who were legitimately good to horrible last season. And then the big thing there is Willie Martinez is the only coach on the staff on the last year of his contract. Everybody else has gotten the contract extension. So that felt kind of like monitor, that before. This is interesting. And then to bring Cory Robinson in, who, I think basically stepped away from the Saints. I don't think he was even fired. Now, maybe it could have been a mutual parting of ways or something, and the language just made it seem like he stepped away. But it's interesting for sure. And it certainly is a very – someone that if Cory Robinson had spent another year with the Saints and Tennessee, Willie Martinez retired at the end of this year and Tennessee hired him, you wouldn't bat an eye at that hire thinking it's a strange one. So to me, it is certainly – very interesting, and it wouldn't be surprising if things end up going down that path.
Ethan, are you optimistic that the secondary is going to be better this year? Are you on the optimistic train that things could be better this year?
I mean, you'd certainly hope so. I mean, from what were they, 12th, 13th in the SEC last season, pass defense?
They weren't Texas A&M in the secondary, I'll say that.
Yeah.
They were 12th in the SEC, but like 7th from the bottom in the entire country.
Yeah. Ooh. There's no way to sugarcoat that, is there? You would certainly hope. You would certainly hope that Tennessee would be a little bit better. From what I've seen from practices, a lot of the newer guys, Conyer, Matthews, and Gibson, I believe. A lot of the newer guys are getting some run, which I think is a good thing. You say if you've got a not a huge defensive back class in 2022, I believe all three of the guys I just named are higher ranked than the highest ranked cornerback / safety that was in the 2022 class. I think I could be wrong on that, but D. Williams obviously is who I'm talking about. And so to have all those guys, you got to switch some stuff around at some point. If you're finishing near 7th from the bottom in the entire nation in pass defense, you got to turn something around. And so see those guys getting some run is good. To see hopefully some growth from some people here in the past that are finishing this defense that's not doing too hot. You would think you can find a certain group of guys, and I'm not 100% sure how Andre Turrentine is doing. I'm not 100% sure how or what kind of rotations are being worked on in camp, but there's enough dudes in the secondary. I think we talked about this a couple months ago, actually. If you can't find something from, the returners, the type of not talent, but just the sheer volume of people that Tennessee has returning. I mean, I originally, when you guys had brought up the Willie Martinez thing, I hadn't realized that this was the last year of his contract. When Ryan said that, it kind of clicked for me. I was like, oh, that's why we're talking about this Cory Robinson as a potential replacement, because, you have the defense as not at the secondary anyway, as not solid as it was. And then you have him entering his last year. It just makes a lot of sense, especially from where Tennessee has been hiring, in the program to replace the guys that are kind of on the way out. And I mean, the secondary, it's been the problem for a couple years now. Not the problem, but it has been part of the problem for a couple years now. And you need to start addressing that. It's nice to see, I guess, that yes, Martinez has been recruiting well, and you have these guys in here, but it feels like a kind of situation where you need to put up or shut up. Like if Tennessee's still finishing down at the bottom there, Heupel's got to address it. And that, I'd say, Chase, that you're right, Chase and Ryan, you're right, that it certainly seems that, Robinson would be the replacement there.
And it's also like, it's kind of nice that you just have these two dichotomies, right? Where clearly Heupel's like, Banks, whatever you want to do on the side of the ball. And there's someone in the administration somewhere who's like, hey, Rodney Gardner, like, you need some SEC ties. You need, especially on defensive line, like Rodney Gardner's got the tie. Like, you need those kind of ace recruiters on that side of the ball. And Brian Jean-Marie, I think, he's probably the most underrated staffer in my estimation. I think the linebackers this year are going to be great. And looking at who they're bringing in and recruiting in the portal, I think Brian Jean-Marie's done a great job. And Eckler, too. I think it's probably a combination there that they're ace recruiters and are pretty solid down the mat. But I just look at this secondary and I'm like, I think it's going to suck again. I think the only way it doesn't is if some edge guys pop. I think that's what they have to do, where if Tennessee is getting more pressure, if Roman Harrison has a great final year, if Joshua Josephs, Tyree West, and company, Bryson Eason, they become this disruptive force. Like, the Tennessee defensive line is actually solid and they are able to get home a lot more than what we saw. Like, Tyler Barron has a breakout year, who's been solid, but hasn't been like a star on the edge. Like, if those things happen, then you can sell me on, okay, we can take some strides there. I think we're still a year away from that, though. I still think you get a year of Chindavian Bradley and all these other dudes in the David Hobbs.
Agree.
Yeah, like, that's next year is when I'm like, all right, I could see it more. There's just talent everywhere in the defensive line and the linebacker room that I could see it. And like a year from now, it might be Jordan Matthews on one side, Ricky Gibson on the other, Christian Conyer on this. Like, there's just more, I'm sure, with some transfers littered in there. I just look at it and I just think that we're like phasing out the last group of just, they're trying their best. It sounds so dismissive, but it's just not like Tamarion McDonald, Warren Burrell, Wesley Walker, Jalen McCullough, Kamal Haddon. You just look at this, like, it might be Brandon Turnage. I think Deshaun Rucker. It's going to be a lot of vets, and I don't think we're going to see a lot of the guys that are pretty like long-term, more fascinating and more upside for this Tennessee group and where they go in the next level. I don't see it. I think they're going to play a lot of vets, and I think a lot of these guys are still going to be in the rotation. And I think, barring injury, I think we're in for another rough secondary year from this group. And I don't know what that means for Willie Martinez going into next year, but I don't see it.
I'd agree with that. Overall, I think there's potential for him to be better at corner. Like, I like even some of those pieces, Haddon, who obviously was infuriating. Like, I think he has talent, and there's the younger guys there where it's like, okay, I could see Gabe Judy Lawley they bring in from BYU. Like, there's guys I can see them being better. Now, I don't think they're going to be great by any means. Safety, I don't see it. I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but if they're trotting Jalen McCullough out there, you're not going to be any better safety. To me, that's just a reality. I don't get why Wesley Walker didn't play over him last year, to be honest with you. That's just my reality. And you're right. I think the two things that are interesting, Martinez, I completely agree with your point. Martinez always seems to side with the veterans. He's going to go with guys who aren't going to have the breaks and may be more, not as high ceiling. If, he doesn't want to retire and he wants to be back at Tennessee, and obviously, it's clear to us that the pressure's on him. That is the reality. It's clear to us. Then I'm sure it's clear to him. Does he bend on that a little bit and play so many younger, more talented guys? I don't know. And then I just think you hit the nail on the head with the most, and I said this last year too, the most realistic path to Tennessee's pass defense being better is the pass rush to be better. Like that's what to me changes it. Be able to get home before, because they really, unless Byron Young was facing an offensive tackle that was just so much less athletic than him, they didn't do that last year, which was what Kentucky and LSU. He just physically abused dudes that he was way more athletic than. Other than that, he wasn't able to get consistent pressure. But again, to your point, it feels like you're a year away. Like the guys that you have in that room that you were really high on and are really talented and big time recruits, they're sophomores and freshmen. It feels like once you get those guys to being juniors and sophomores, you have a little bit more. And then you bring in another freshman class, I think what you're going to, and solid guys along the defensive line. Then it's like, okay, you got the depth, and you can see these guys kind of taking a step forward, but it just feels a little early to think that's going to happen this season.
I agree. Jack Foster, friend of the pod, wrote a piece on where the Vols wide receiver group ranks in terms of the SEC. Ethan, when you look at